in one person in particular, but it was part of it was there was not enough work to go around, right? The partners were having trouble getting their work, so there wasn't enough to give to us. But I remember one person in particular, there was not a lot of development of new associates, right? You were just there and you were given the work, and if you figured it out, great. You swam in this pool with cement shoes, and if you didn't, you drowned. But one in particular came in and it made it a point to, I mean, just not a very nice guy, came in and said, well, I understand you're leaving. Well, you really weren't going to amount. You really couldn't cut it here. You weren't made for this. I'm surprised that you lasted. I mean, this was not very nice, and I'm trying to be kind to him, but he said some things along those lines, and he was one of the worst offenders. Like, he was never really supportive, never tried to help you, just was a guy who yelled and screamed, but billed a lot, right? So you know where that means, where he lands in the firm hierarchy. And, and eventually that caught up with him. But at that moment in time, I just decided, I said, look, I'm not, in my mind, I'm not an idiot, right? I graduated, I passed the bar. And so I decided, and I won't use his name because that wouldn't be fair, but I did say, I said, you see that plaque up on the wall there? And he said, yeah, what about it? I said, well, I'll just tell you this. See, that plaque tells me at that time, at that moment, people in the country, across the country, said I was the very best at what I did. And I'll say, Josh, what it was. So, it was I was selected a first team All-American in hockey that year. So my coach couldn't vote for me. All the other coaches picked me to be the best goalie in college hockey at our level, Division II, Division III college hockey in the country. I had no idea. I was on the 7th place team. And just, I got hit a lot. That was my job. And I love playing, but that was a great surprise. But they said, you are the very best. And so I told them, I said, you see that? That's what it means. When you're that good at anything, you can come talk to me like this. But for right now, you can just get out of my office. And because, this was a person who he hadn't been supportive, hadn't tried to help, hadn't tried to develop. All he wanted to do was just pummel you. And, to me, I'd had enough. I was not an idiot. I'd made some mistakes. I mean, there's some things I just didn't do right. I understand. And I was willing to stand up and accept those. Also, no one ever told me what to do. You had to figure it out. I didn't figure it out the right way sometimes. And, but that was just not called for. That shouldn't have been tolerated. And I just had enough. And I have to tell you, it felt really good because he didn't know what to say. He was just like, you can get out. You just, on. Because I was very blessed and fortunate to have that award. So, is that the one you were thinking of? Because I can't remember. Is it?
It was. And the reason I think that, besides the fact that you had the confidence and self-assuredness to say that, but it was also, if I remember correctly, you didn't have a job lined up right after you quit this.
Oh, no, you're exactly right. I didn't. I had nothing lined up. I had a handful of clients in sports. These were all guys playing in minor league sports, except for one guy. It was not enough to make a living off of, but I didn't want to be there. They didn't really want me, and I didn't want them. But that wasn't what was going to define me as a success or not. So no, I had no play. It wasn't like I had the soft landing spot. I had none. I didn't have a parachute to float down on. I just hoped it was a high building I was jumping off of, which is a terrible thing to say. I hope it was a long way before I crashed because I wasn't quite sure where I was going, but I knew it wasn't going to stay there, and I knew that wasn't for me.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you were able to figure that out so early on in your career. So after you left this job, what came next?
I had a short stint, and I say short, maybe a year and a half or so, a couple of years, with a sole practitioner in a small town in Michigan, who my dad, who was a chaplain, met in the hospital after he'd had a heart attack. And he was a great guy. And he tried to, had a great small town practice focused on, small typical things, small real estate deals, bankruptcies, some criminal defense work, but all misdemeanors, no felonies. He did some divorce work, had a great office manager. She could sniff out the good ones and the big problems just conveniently. Sorry, we're not going to, she was really good at. But here's a guy who I respected was trying to get out of the industry because he didn't like the integrity of people that he had to deal with the way it had been 20 years before. So why am I beating my head trying to get into this business? The people I respected were the people who were all trying to get out, not just him, but other people and partners at the firm who were saying, this is not the same way it used to be. You could shake hands and, you had a deal, just not long before he and I had this conversation. He shook hands at a county courthouse. By the time he got back to his office, the guy had just done the opposite, filed a motion went against what he'd promised to do on a handshake. He said that's the integrity you get from a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot. I said, this is not for me. I didn't enjoy what I'd been doing. This is not what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And so at that point in time, I took a big jump, and again, had no place to go except for a handful of clients, and had made some contacts and said, I'm going to try to line up with one of the bigger player agents in the business, and scrambled for a few years and had a few lean years. But he had a good stable of clients, guy I ended up connecting with, aligning with, did pretty well. I won't say great, until I had someone call me about, and we help people buy and sell teams. So we help move some teams around in different places, everywhere from the NHL down to alphabet soup farm leagues. And one of them called me and asked me if I wanted to run a team. And I said, well, let me think. It's in Florida. It's warm, and yes, I have to think past that. So
you were only in law for really a hot second there. Was less than 5 years.
Yeah, less than five. Yeah, easily less than five. Might even be about 4-ish.
Wow.
But when you see people, and again, I don't want to throw any one place on the bus. It wasn't just unique to me. I mean, I know a lot of people had it. I got in a little bit of trouble one time when I was at the firm, when they brought new summer associates in, and they were telling about the great work-life balance it had, and we don't worry about hours. And I literally laughed and out loud and kind of scoffed. I mean, I made a noise, and I got in trouble. I said, because that's not the way it is here. That's not my life. I heard that same thing a year ago, and it's not my life here. And that creates a challenge. And the pressure on billable hours. It's not that you don't mind working hard, right? You just want to have a chance to succeed. But I did want to. I wanted to be in an environment that if it was one where I had to sink or swim on what I figured out, the practice of law in a lot of these areas wasn't probably where I was going to do it without someone to guide me and mentor me. And that just didn't exist a lot. Or maybe I wasn't the star that they wanted to attract. But in hockey, I could. I'd played it. I knew people. I knew the game, and I kind of knew I had some pathways to make some things work. So if you have to rely on yourself, you're going to go to a place where you have some strength but can still grow.
Yeah, and hockey is a little bit off the beaten path. I don't remember taking any hockey classes at the MBA school about how to run a hockey business. So you went in there and you ran a hockey company. What was that? What was that like?
Well, it's like running any other business. You just have to figure out, and this is where my MBA came in so handy, right? I mean, I had a legal background. I could handle a lot of contracts, or other issues came up like player contracts and stuff. But most of those are every league. They're almost all handled by league offices, so they're all standard contracts. That was helpful to find out where loopholes were, to be able to what wasn't included and what wasn't unallowed, shall I say, to be able to pay guys, because you had to work your way around salary caps in every league, and so you just had to be creative. But from running a team operationally, it's like any other business. Where are my revenue streams? What are my big cost centers? How do I manage them? And what drives my revenue? And so in hockey, it was really simple. It was your biggest revenues, tickets, and your second biggest revenues, corporate sponsorship. Then you have your merchandise. In some buildings now, not very many back then, you got some of the concession revenue, which everyone thinks is where you make your money, and it can be. But most of the buildings for the hockey teams didn't get concession revenue. So you only had those three streams: your tickets, merchandise, and sponsorships. Tickets by far being, and once you know that, you kind of figure it out. Okay, what are my cost centers? Salaries, insurance, rent, and then you kind of figure out what you can manage. But the biggest one is asking your owner a simple question: do you want to win, or do you want to make money? Because a lot of guys buy these as, the great joke is, how do you make a small fortune in minor league hockey? Start with a big one. And but they can make money. I mean, they really can. And you just have to know how to do it. But it doesn't mean you're going to win championships. You'll be competitive, and you'll win at home most of the time, but you're not necessarily going to win championships. And so you have to ask your owner, what's the priority? Because I can tell you a number of championship teams that were not in business the next year, but boy, they won the cup once. But I can also show you teams that have been around a long time, may have won one, but they've been around a long time because they are profits and they make money. And they're built to make money.
Was the difference between the ones that stuck around and the ones that didn't just that they had a more focus on, driving ticket sales, sponsorships, et cetera?
Yeah, and they didn't overspend to try to get that one player, that one coach, or overspend to make, like where you housed your players, how you travel. I knew a couple teams that traveled all the time by private jet. I mean, that's how bad it was. One weekend we had a 2-game series. Whoever got more points out of these 2 games, so the home and home, they won the division. And last 2 games of the season in my building, we put in 10,000 plus. I think we won the game, and we were up by 1 point. But we went after the game. My guys are climbing on a charter bus, right, to drive 7 hours to go to play the same team tomorrow night in their building. Those guys, and they made sure every one of my guys knew it all night long. They're climbing on a private jet, and they'll be home in about an hour and a half. And so my guys, but that team, they made a lot of money, but they weren't around a long time. That's the difference. Is that you build your model for sustainability, but you can be competitive, and depending on how lax the league is around the rules, you have a chance of winning. And in junior hockey, the team actually did it. I was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for 5 years. Team won a national championship in juniors. We ran it like a pro team, just didn't have to pay players, which is the best of everything.